Africa climate change. The total GHG emissions, including land use change and forestry for Africa in 2012 was 3,730.65 metric million tons. This equates to 7.8 of the total GHG emissions worldwide. The total GHG emissions worldwide equate to about 47,598.55 million metric tons.
Although African countries are not leading the world in greenhouse gas emissions, Africa is still being negatively affected. Climate change has caused droughts and flooding in certain parts of Africa. Both of these things have impacted their agriculture, which has impacted their food supply, as agriculture is what most of Africa relies on. This in turn has caused malnourishment. The heat waves have reduced the air quality, causing breathing problems and health problems that countries in Africa do not have the medical resources to fix. Lastly, the flooding that occurs in some regions has caused a serious spike in malaria.
The Paris Agreement. Quote, "The adoption of the Paris Agreement shows that the world understands that with the climate change there are no winners and no losers. Either we all win together or we all lose together," says the president of the AFDB group. Akinwumi Adesina said Sunday. The summit marked a historic moment when 195 countries chose to stand on the side of justice and common sense, and the voice of Africa has been heard, loud and clear. The agreement is critical for Africa, which is extremely vulnerable to the impact of climate change. The agreement is expected to help Africa source funding and technology to mitigate climate change, develop renewable energy resources, and chart a course to a sustainable future while adapting to the impact of increasingly erratic weather patterns. During past conferences, African negotiators have strongly advocated for increased and adequate financing for adaptation, as actual funds are not sufficient to meet the related extensive needs in Africa. John Parkin, the deputy plant manager at A Tekwani municipality, says that he would like Africa to get a better crack at getting climate finance, and in return wants the money that he feels his project has earned in terms of the Kyoto Protocol. "I don't like to use the term failed, but the CDM has certainly not met expectations," suggests Ali Abdul Saba from the African Development Bank.
To mitigate or adapt to climate change, countries in Africa, especially the most underdeveloped ones, have temporarily migrated to more urban parts of Africa to make a life other than agriculture. They have created climate-resilient livelihoods by making irrigation systems using a no-tilling farming practice. And to lower the greenhouse gases they emit, Africa has been lowering the amount of deforestation that occurs.
As we have learned, Africa is one of the most affected regions of climate change. They are experiencing droughts, rising sea levels, coastal storms, flooding, the spread of disease, and contamination of drinking water. Africa has decided to finally join the COP21 policy, which involves the cooperation of 190 countries. UN Framework on the Climate Change talked about this at the Paris Climate Conference. The UN has recruited 150 scientists to travel to Africa to do research on the effects of climate change and what some possible solutions could be. In 2012, Africa decided to partner with the African Development Bank, which was placed in order to help fund the country in their decisions in which environmentally supportive organizations would be most beneficial for the country. They are working with a variety of organizations, ones working towards saving the forests and creating clean water facilities. For example, organizations like the Global Environment Facility and the Least Developed Countries Organization, in order to help pay for funds. New partnerships with the NEPAD plan, which was placed in order to help reduce the amount of poverty within the country. In the grand scheme of things, Africa transmits the least amount of gases compared to other countries like China, India, or the US. Although Africa's transmission is minimal, they are one of the most affected countries of climate change. Africa relies heavily on natural resources, but as these resources become destroyed due to the rise in temperature, droughts, unnatural storms, the country becomes unstable. After an extensive amount of research, we believe that Africa is doing the best they can considering the resources they have access to. They are investing what little money they have into organizations that will contribute to the decrease of climate change. These organizations also benefit the country in a way to help stabilize it and allow it to thrive for many more years to come.